kind of the subject I'd like to focus on, and then we'll let it wander. Like I said, it's real conversational. So, are we ready? Cool. That's our end. Hey, welcome to Fireside TATS, episode 57. Does that sound right? We're going to call it 57. If there's already a 57, it's scratched. My name is Jake Meeks. I am the host of the Fireside TATS Tattoo Improvement Podcast, and I'm here with Jeff Hein today, just a world-known tattoo artist. Everyone loves his work. He's been tattooing for years. Jeff is not a tattooer in real life, but he is one of the best painters I've ever come across. And we're here at the Portrait Society of America's annual conference, and so we're not going to get everything into this interview that I want to, but just as a quick introduction, Jeff, I've spent a little time with Jeff on 2 different occasions over the last 6 or 8 months, and he's really just an incredible painter, even better guy, just as genuine of a person as you'll ever meet, very humble, and I won't have him like rehash everything he told in this story this morning, but he's got one of the most interesting life stories you've ever heard. We won't go into it, but it'll provide a little bit of a backdrop for what he's working on now and why he does what he does and all that kind of stuff. So do you want to hit on, without going into a lot of detail, like kind of where you came from, what you, just where you, a quick synopsis of where you started and what you're doing now?
Related to this morning or just in general?
Just in general. More.
Well, I'm originally from New Windsor, New York. I started painting not until I got into college, when I was 17. That was my first art class. I took a few breaks for a variety of things, from illness and a variety of other things, and then started painting again, or started going to school again when I was about 23, and finally got into painting full-time by the time I was about 28.
Yeah, and
been doing it ever since. I'm 40 now. Yeah.
So one thing that sets you apart is that as far as we know, you're the only living artist that's doing multifigure. When I say multifigure, I don't mean 2 people. Like, he's working on a 40+ figure person entirely from life. You do not work from photographs at all, which is mind-boggling. Will be mind-boggling to anyone listening to this, I know. And I almost would think it was unbelievable if I hadn't seen photos of some of the of your process and how. What made you start doing that? What has it done to improve your work, or has it improved your work, or what do you?
Ever since I started painting, well, even in high school when I was just drawing and doodling on the back of books and stuff, at that point, I remember kids in school working from photographs and thinking, well, that's weird. Like, it just didn't feel natural to me, And I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but I found it unusual that would even be the desire. So I would just doodle and doodle out of my head. Then I went to school and started discovering that that's what people do, like taking reference material and putting together paintings. And then by the time I was done with school, that was just the way of life. Mm-hmm. That's just what you did. But I never really felt super good about it, And like I said, it's not that it was an ethical thing. It was just like, it just never felt pure in my mind. So I got to a point, I did it for a long time. I used photography for a long time. And there's still the rare occasion where I have to use it, but very, very rarely. But I used it for a long time exclusively. And then at some point I realized that I was plateauing in my career, and I still had that gnawing feeling in my head that I had way back in high school, that it just didn't feel natural. Mm-hmm. And so I thought about, okay, I've plateaued in my work. I don't know what else to do to get better except this. And I knew I needed to add some resistance, make painting harder. So I decided to just let go of photography and Photoshop and any other tool that made painting easier for me.
You call them, when I did your workshop some months back, you called them crutches, and I thought that was probably was a pretty good way to. You got rid of anything.
Yeah, it felt like a crutch to me.
Like it was just a cheat.
Well, cheat's a strong word. Yeah. It felt like it just made it easier. I mean, it's that simple. And some artists have the philosophy, which is very logical and rational, that the finished product is all that matters, and whatever you do to get there is just just a path, and it makes most sense to travel the path of least resistance. Well, and that's very logical, but that all depends on your end goal. My end goal is not just a great painting. My end goal is to become a better artist. So if your goal is to become a better artist, then you need resistance. It's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym and reduce weight as you get stronger. You increase it, And so that's what I had to do. I had to increase my weight mentally and get rid of some of the things that were making painting easy.
Yeah. Do you feel like do you feel like when you look at work that like painters that work entirely from photographs or build compositions in Photoshop, do you feel like that it comes through most of the time in their finished product, or do you feel like you can walk up and look at most work and say, hey, that was probably done from photographs?
I think I could do it with most work, but I mean, honestly, I think I could do a painting from a photograph that no one would know.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly working from life.
Mm-hmm. And you've learned how to translate what you see in life. No, you can see it no matter what reference you're taking it from at this point.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think anyone would know the difference. But again, back to what I'd said before, that's not really the point. To me, the point isn't the end product. The point is the process.
Right.
The point is how much you grow along the way. So even if you couldn't tell if anyone was using photography or not, I still would be motivated to not use it. So when I find out someone's using photography, I still find value in the painting, but not the same kind of value that I see or that I find in a painting that was done in a much more difficult way.
Yeah. Well, one reason I thought this is important to get you on the show and to get your viewpoint is that tattooers have to we invent imagery constantly. We have to. It's we're working with kind of like not really. Unlike portrait painters, like commissioned portrait painters that are working, if they're working for photographs, they have an end result that they're looking for. Well, a lot of what we're doing is imaginative, and it doesn't really exist, and we're having to make it happen. And what I find, especially with these kind of like tattoo rock stars that are coming up out of nowhere now, it's just exploded, is that they skip the process of learning what light actually does on anything, and they immediately go to drawing from their heads, and they're drawing from other tattoo artists that they love. So they're really like drawing from drawing a more stylized idea from an already stylized idea.
Right.
And a lot of times when and now great artists, and there are plenty of them that probably pull that off just fine. But one thing that I see, we critique portfolios for people a lot, just tattoo portfolios. And one thing that I see is just inconsistency in light sources and things like that. And so I'm always telling people that exact thing. It's like, you really need to know what that thing actually looks like. Don't go look at your favorite. If you're tattooing a bird, don't go look at your favorite bird tattooer and try to copy his birds. Go find a bird. Like what's the bird really look like? And it's something that I think is getting lost pretty quickly. And you're just on such the other extreme of it, and it comes through in your work. I think it's really really obvious how effortless it seems to watch you work. It seems like it comes together quickly and easily to you.
Well, it's hard in my head. You don't know what's going the pain that I'm struggling inside my brain, but I mean, painting's never been easy, but doing it that way has made it easier. I mean, you'd asked before how it's affected my work. I'm not sure if people can notice it or not, but I notice it, because when I'm working with kids and animals and things that move and people in motion, sometimes I'll be working with a kid and he'll pose for like 2 minutes and then take a half an hour break.
Yeah.
And I have to work a lot from memory. So it's strengthened me to a point that when I'm doing something that sits still, then it makes it so much easier.
I bet.
And so, to that point you made about those tattoo artists, I don't know anything about tattooing, but to me that sounds unfortunate, because if you skip this stage of just observing nature and allow yourself to respond to nature as it is, and just go right to what you're seeing other artists do, then it seems to me you'd be losing the opportunity to express yourself the way you would naturally express yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think all of us have a signature, the way we move, the way we hold a brush, or in your case, a needle or a pencil. And the only way you can discover that is to stop looking at other artists and just look at nature and just try and focus on that observation of the things around you.
You made the point this morning in your talk that you might think you have nothing to say, and that's why you find yourself trying to paint what other people like, or what you see as popular in other places, and things like that. But so your point here is that everyone has something to say, even if it's just the individual mark that you make, even if it's not some social statement or some any kind of statement. What you have to say is in your mark making alone.
A lot. In fact, frankly, I think most artists that make social statements or political statements don't know what they're talking about and should probably just stick to mark making.
Yeah.
I think that artists feel this social pressure and professional pressure to say something profound, because artists in the past have been praised for their profound, so-called profound statements. And but to be a great artist, frankly, you don't have time to be educated enough to make a profound statement. Leave that to the philosophers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it's the rare artist that is in a position to really comment on society and politics. And the greater expression is in the imagery and how you make marks and how you compose and how you express with color and the emotions you can draw from an image with those tools.
Yeah.
Can
you tell just real quickly, if you can, the story of the study that was done at the university with the putting the people in the room with the pad?
Oh yeah, totally paraphrasing. This has been years since I saw that, but there was a book that I read. I probably should have looked it up before the interview.
That's all right. Well,
there's a book that I didn't even read it. A student told me about it, where there was this experiment, and I did see in the book this sample of all the images that they produced during that experiment. But they told a bunch of people that they were going to do some kind of interview, and they stuck them in a room, and they laid a piece of paper and a pencil in front of them, and then they left and said they'd be back. And then they came back in 20 minutes or something, and people had doodled. And every single person who had doodled on the paper had a very specific and unique way of doodling. And even if they changed the way they doodled, their mark making was very, very unique to them.
Right.
And
these weren't this wasn't an art test at all. These were just people.
No, they didn't even know they were being tested on that. Yeah. And then they never got interviewed. That was the whole point. They were So and what that proved is what I've experienced as a teacher. I've been teaching since 2002, so 13 years, and that is that everyone does have a unique way of designing and making marks, and you have to be, as a teacher, I have to be so careful to not strip them of that, not teach them techniques that are gonna mask their individual expression, because a lot of techniques have their own style attached to them. The technique actually determines the style of the mark, and so I try and teach my students principles void of technique, and so that they can come up with their own techniques to execute those principles. Yeah. And
it's a challenge, I'm sure, huh?
Honestly, it's not. Like, really? Instead of saying to them, "Why don't you hold the pencil like this?" I only focus on, okay, is that line long enough, or is that shape wide enough, or is that value dark enough or light enough? Those are principles where many teachers say, try holding the pencil like this. Try. I mean, I've heard, draw with your arm. Well, maybe they don't want to draw with their arm. Maybe their mark is with their wrist. And granted, those are all good. That's all good advice. But I prefer just to let them do what feels natural.
Yeah.
Have you thought about cross hatching? I cross hatch like this. Have you thought about doing that? I never say things like that because I want them to come up with their own, what feels natural to them. Yeah. So it's really not that challenging.
Well, while we're on the subject of your school, the Hein Academy of Art, and it's in Salt Lake. Is it in Salt Lake?
Salt Lake City.
Okay, I didn't know if it was in a suburb or what. But will you go through just a little bit of how I don't know if curriculum is the right term, but how the process works with your students.
Okay. So it's patterned exactly like the way the old masters were taught. I mean, my school is about as close to the school that Michelangelo would have attended that you can get.
Hmm.
I have a limit of 16 apprentices, and they all work in the same building that I do, and they can watch me paint any hour of any day that I'm there, and they learn by directly working, not on my work, but directly working under me, in that I'm always present, and they always see me, and I'm always available to critique them. But they have their own assignments, and they work through a curriculum that's progress-based.
Meaning that there is no freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
No. They draw until they can draw. Then they do value until they can do value. Then they do color until they can do color. And they have to prove their competency or they don't move on. So one student could take 2 years, another student could take 6.
Yeah.
But they have to be self-motivated because they don't get graded. They come on their own schedule, but it's open 24/7. The biggest strength to it is just that they are exposed to a real painting career on a regular basis. If they were to go to a school, a traditional, well, not traditional, this is the most traditional, but a contemporary traditional school, like a university, for example, they would never see their teacher's career. Oftentimes the teachers don't even have a artist art career, but even if they had, it would be sort of separate from the school.
Yeah, that was my experience in school.
Yeah, and so the students graduate kind of having no idea what it is like to be an artist and don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And in this case, they know exactly where to start. They know exactly what it looks like because they've lived with it for 5 years, and so it's helpful that way.
Yeah.
And the tuition's cheap because they're all apprentices, so they all help me around the studio, or at least most of them do. And so
it seems
it's
like
great.
such a great setup, and if you're in that area, then it'd definitely be. I don't know how often you accept new students, but it seems like just a great opportunity, and I've seen a few of your students work, and it's just fantastic. A little bit off the subject, but we have a really similar issue in that we both are easily distracted. We both keep a lot going, and you are. I always call myself kind of a jack of all trades, but you're more of like a master of all trades because you've got you're obviously a full-time painter, but you build tons of stuff for your paintings, tons of sets. Metal work, scissor lifts to move models in the air, leather work, woodwork, and you're really accomplished in all of those things. Do you have a process or anything that, like, do you just allow yourself to be distracted when you want to be distracted, or do you say, is it in your calendar, like, I do woodwork from 8 to 10 and then I paint from this time to this time, or do you just let it go?
I wish I could be that disciplined. No, I just do whatever. When I wake up in the morning, I do whatever I feel like doing.
And do you feel like it? I mean, I guess it doesn't hinder you at all. I mean,
I'm still surviving.
You're right.
Yeah. There are days where I'm like, I really need to paint today, but for the most part, if I want to build something, I'm not going to be able to focus on painting anyway, so I build it.
Yeah.
Because I am a space case. I got whatever's in my head needs to be resolved, or it's stuck in my head and nothing else can fit. So. Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place that way.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, me too. I'm trying to structure it a little bit more, but I thought maybe you'd have some words.
No,
of
I
wisdom.
wish I did.
It's
a constant struggle.
It was worth a shot.
Yeah. I figure if Da Vinci couldn't do it and he's a genius, then it's not so bad. Yeah,
then you probably can't either. But now, I mean, you also just as much as your dedication to your art, your church and your family are both really huge in your life. So you and I know that you find a way to incorporate both of those things into your work, and we're going to clip in, or we probably through this whole interview we have been clipping in Jeff's work, and you'll see. I'll try to point out where I can what I mean by that, and that he does a lot of paintings for his church, or not necessarily for his church.
Some of them,
but and then you incorporate your family into your paintings a lot. But as far as like dividing your time that way, because a lot of people trying to break into tattooing are working other jobs and apprenticing. Apprenticing to tattoo doesn't pay anything, and it requires a lot of time and effort and mopping and things like that. You do obviously separate time for. Do you treat the studio as an 8 to 5 kind of thing?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to family, I have to be disciplined about it.
Yeah.
With the other distractions,
yeah,
I'm not, because that's my time.
Yeah.
But I go every morning. I get up, take my kids to school, go to the gym, go to work, come home at 6 o'clock. I mean, sometimes I'm home at 7:30. But for the most part, I'm there every night around the same time. We always eat dinner together, and then I'm home the rest of the evening. And it has to be that way because my attitude is my kids are only going to be kids for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And I got to make the best of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Man, I know. Do you know where we are on time? I know there's like 1,000 things I want to bring up. Are we okay?
You run out of memory or something?
No, we try to keep. We used to do these really long episodes, and then I noticed just looking at our analytics that people don't want to sit in front of their computers for an hour. So I've tried to keep them at 30 minutes and below, just so that they're in like manageable chunks for people, and it seems like it's helped. It seems like people kind of stick with them and a lot of times people will just you'll look and see and oh wow, that's an hour and 10 minutes long. I'm not even going to click on that to you know what I mean. So that's why I just try to kind of keep up with it. But back to the life drawing. Do you have any for someone that has a full-time kind of drawing job or other jobs? Do you have anything that's worked for you or your students as far as exercises? Any when you do these workshops, anything that you can recommend on getting yourself in the habit or simple exercises, things that people that
just drawing and painting in general,
from life, from because it's such a different thing. I mean, a lot of people who, well, I'll use myself as an example. I can paint from photographs pretty well. You put me in front of a live model, and I'm discouraged within 5 minutes. And I know a lot of people, including myself, will have a tendency to let me just snap a photo of them, and then whenever I get home, I'll actually make this painting look decent.
Right.
Any advice for people that struggle with it? Are there small, manageable exercises that anything like that, or just
not so much advice. I don't really have advice on how to manage your time with models and stuff like that, but
it doesn't even have to be. I mean, I wouldn't think you don't have to draw models. I mean, anything from life that you're drawing, right?
Well, the only thing I'd say about that is, when I switched to, I was working almost exclusively from photographs. I would work from life occasionally just for practice, but my professional work was almost exclusively from photographs. And then when I decided to make that switch, I literally put my camera away for 5 years, never touched a photograph again. Oh, wow. And I took a huge pay cut, huge, because my paintings got slower. They were much harder. I made more mistakes. Some of the stuff you're talking about. It's more discouraging. I get a kid in front of me and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna die." I mean, my daughter almost put me in tears. She wouldn't hold still the first time I did her, and she was 7.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, you got to consider what you really care about. I mean, do you just want to get the painting done, or do you want to be great? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially for an artist that has a job and hasn't broken out, my recommendation would be overcome that, or conquer that bridge before you become a professional, because it's way harder once you become a professional. If you're used to making money as a professional and then you try and switch to doing it the hard way, it becomes much more scary.
Yeah, I bet.
But if you do it while you're still learning and you come out into the field doing it the hard way, well, by that point it's not the hard way anymore, and there's no sacrifice. You've trained, and because at this point it's not difficult for me to work from life. It's totally second nature. I mean, yeah, there's still challenges, but it's not like it used to be. I'm not as intimidated like you described. I went through the same thing.
Yeah.
You know? So just do it when you can do it while you're still not a professional.
And you think it's more important to work figuratively from life? Because I was just
I do everything from life, everything.
I mean, as opposed to when I just made the comment, it doesn't mean that you always have to have a model to make time to draw from life. You're like,
no way.
Draw
anything.
Whatever.
Draw,
anything.
Well, you draw the microphones, draw that bench, draw anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to draw living things, but I'll go out and go to the zoo and sketch animals, and that's challenging because they're moving. But it's great. I mean, it helps you to learn a lot, and to
capture and kind of trains you to capture the essence or what you're looking for quickly, just because of that,
right?
Because of the unpredictability of animals or kids or whatever it is.
Plus, it strengthens your memory, because really, when you're drawing things that are difficult, that move, you're drawing from memory, I mean, something will be in one position that you want them to be in. That's how you lock them in your head, but then they move, and you have to go by what you remember. You don't. You're not just directly observing and looking up and down and comparing. So really, that's what it comes down to. And if you can strengthen your memory, then it helps in all aspects of art. I mean, then you start realizing, oh wait, my subjects have gone home, and I'm still drawing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that before, and so it helps you in a lot more areas than one.
Yeah. We might be getting kicked out of here. It's hard to say. Okay. Well, there's a ton more that I want to say, but maybe we can. I'd love to make a trip and do do something at walk through your school, kind of show people what you do. I'm gonna find what I can. I might get you to kind of send me some of those images of the mock-ups that you've built and the tools and things like that, just because they're so incredible to me. But yeah, that was kind of the point I wanted to make with the episode was, I know you'd find a nice way to put it, but making it hard on yourself and not thinking about this end product being the end product, that the entire thing is a process. And I know a lot of people, especially in an industry like tattooing that's booming, people want to jump in and they're afraid they're going to miss out. You know what I mean? And so they're like, I have to be good fast. And so you have a tendency to shortcut. And I see digital tools becoming more and more widely used, and there are classes on using digital tools for preparing your tattoos. And
oh wow!
And maybe there's something to that, but I don't see that ever replacing drawing or working from life. I mean, it just seems like there's just that you're gonna lose something really important whenever you glaze over that step.
Yeah.
All right. Well, JeffHine.com, is that what it is? Okay, JeffHine.com. We'll put that information up. And I really would like to do another one because there's a few other points that I'd like to hit, but we're already probably close to 30 minutes, aren't we? Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.